Journaling to feel safe, to be vulnerable and receive love. Now, this is a journaling topic that was sent in by one of our beautiful viewers and readers and people who clearly is going through a process of recognizing that in order to build close, intimate, beautiful relationships with others, whether they're romantic or otherwise, we require, especially if we want depth, a level of vulnerability and ability to be open to receiving what they have to give and to offer and to share. And vulnerability is such a funny thing because closing ourselves off from people, especially if we've had some kind of traumatic experiences when we're younger, where being vulnerable hasn't felt safe, feels like a protection, like a protective coping strategy is to close ourselves off, build a wall, don't let people in deeply, don't connect deeply, don't share openly. However, in fact, once you actually practice vulnerability with just this open, courageous heart, you recognize what a strength it is, because it is irresistible and it bonds people and it allows this depth of intimacy to come through that we just don't have access to. My English is very difficult today. We just don't have access to without vulnerability. So I am going to guide you through 4 journaling questions to connect to your vulnerability so that you can open up and receive the love that's all around us all the time. And the funny thing is when we're vulnerable and open, then others are able to be vulnerable and open. And if you want to have if you want love, give love. If you want depth and connection, give depth and connection. If you want intimacy, offer intimacy. It's irresistible. You'll be met where you're at. And if you're wanting it from a specific person and they're not able to meet you there, they're not your person. Even if it's just a friendship, go elsewhere. There are so many incredible human beings on this planet. I think over 7 billion people. You're going to find your people. It's heartbreaking how alone and lonely people feel in the world these days. And when we're willing to take the risk and put ourselves out there into the world and share what's on our hearts, that changes. And that level of connection that we're all seeking is much more accessible. So, firstly, I'm going to time you. So don't worry about the time. I want you to free write for 5 minutes. So there's just this conscious stream of thought, or even heart and brain dump, whatever comes through for 5 minutes, what it means to you to feel vulnerable. What does it mean to you to feel vulnerable? 5 minutes, I'm going to time us. I've got it sorted. I'm just going to be quiet over here, and I'm going to journal on it as well, actually. Maybe I'll share some answers. I am going to share something that just came up for me. So one of the reasons that I think people have a fear around being vulnerable is because of how they're afraid how their truth is going to land with someone. And this is because many of us haven't learned the boundaries of our responsibilities. You're responsible for how you show up in the world, how you respond to the world, and you're responsible for your emotions, for the interactions, the words you use, and the perception you have or perspective you choose to have of the world. So essentially, you are responsible for your universe that you are the center of. We're all the center of our own universes. So you're not responsible for other people's perspectives, other people's responses, other people's emotions. All the things I just listed that you're responsible for yourself, you're not responsible for others. And so there's this misconception, and many of us have been brought up to be responsible for the emotional waves, let's say, of, for example, our caregivers. And then that, because they're like, you made me mad, you made me la la, then we are afraid to express ourselves with integrity and vulnerability because we don't want to get in trouble. But hopefully we're all adults here now watching this, and we've learned to reparent ourselves in much healthier ways. And it might be something that I need to create I have something in my eye, some information around this whole reparenting concept. I've just lost my train of thought. It'll come back. Yeah. So one of the most liberating knowings that you can allow to really settle into your bones is the knowing that because you're not responsible for other people's responses and reactions, nothing that they say or do needs to be taken personally. It's not about you. People's responses and reactions are always about them, their projections, and their narrative and story within them. So if it's really positive, it's because they're in a really good place. And if it's negative, it's because they're not in a good place. Hi, Palm. So recognize that. Okay, your 5 minutes are up. Time goes really fast when I'm chatting. So, number 2, write about when you feel the most vulnerable. When do you feel the most vulnerable? For me, I'm the most vulnerable when I share something that's going on in my world that's bothering me or worrying me or bringing me delight, something that's making me feel strong responses or reactions or emotions around, with someone who might not expect it. I'll give you an example. So I've just moved to Mallorca 2 months ago, not long at all. And of course, one of the key aspects of moving someplace new is that you want to build a community. And I knew a couple of people from Instagram, and I had a few people connect me, which was really lovely. And one of the people who I connected with, we decided to go to this event together, and I got in her car. We met, I got in her car, and then someone else who I'd never met got into the car. And it's a double-edged thing. So I know that the fastest way to form a bond is to be really vulnerable and honest with people right from the get-go, like not to hide, not to dance around, just to like bare oneself. And also something had just happened that really bothered me, and normally maybe I would call a girlfriend who I'm really close with to share this with, but I was in this car with these 2 women, and they've had life experiences too. So I decided to very vulnerably share this very personal story of things that had happened, and then this the sequence of events that had happened, and then I might tell you the story another time, but it's still quite raw for me. And then in the car, when I was in the car with them, I'd received a message about this sequence of events, and it just brought all this stuff up for me. And so I basically told them the whole story, and it's so funny. You could see their bodies and their faces change while I was telling this story. You know, they're like, this is new person, we're like trying to figure each other out, but suddenly this new person is just bearing her soul in a really vulnerable way to us, even though we've only just met. Showing her weaknesses, showing her tender points, showing how human she is, and just like their faces relax, their bodies relax. There's this intimate connection built really, really quickly, and it's been a wonderful friendship with all three of us ever since. And I'm so grateful. And it was because I chose in that moment not to close off, but to open up, to share my wounds, to allow these people who had just met to see me fully. And that is such a gift to give yourself and those around you. So, story for you as you're journaling. Number 3, do you feel more or less connected to others when you are vulnerable? This is a really quick answer. Do you feel more or less connected? And what's coming up for you? For me, for sure, I feel way more connected with others when I am vulnerable. Also because I carry no shame around the things that challenge me and the things that I feel vulnerable around. And so maybe that's something that you want to go back to. A couple of days ago, we journaled around shame, reflecting on that, and being introspective and exploring your shame is what helps clear it. So when you don't have shame around things, it's so much easier just to be vulnerable about them, because you're not like, oh, what will people think? You're like, hey, you know what? I'm human, I'm going through these difficult things, and that's life. All right, number 4, how can you consciously choose to share your emotions and desires with others? How can you consciously choose to be vulnerable with people? What is it going to take, and what are the steps you're going to take to be able to do that? I'm going to leave you with that question. So even though this guided journaling video is ending, you can stay with it and journal until you're complete, until you fully answer that question. And then, journaling is not just about putting down the words and then leaving it. Journaling is about putting down the words, allowing the insights to inspire you, and then to take action on them.